Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 12 of the Outcast Saving podcast, touching on Fab. Tonight, we're going to be hitting on the Road to Nationals results, sort of our plans for presenting that information going forward, just off our Facebook page, sharing that, just how our locals are going, and sort of our feedback that we've got internally and how people that are trying to get that scene started in their neck of the woods could probably go about that a little smoother than we started out and hit the ground running with that. And then we also want to hit on the secondary market and talking about how unlimited might affect that and what we're expecting to see. So stay tuned. I've also got a fabulous fab fact for tonight. So that'll be good because I'm excited to put out another lore video. All right. Well, opening up with a fabulous fab fact. You've got the Land of Mysteria, which is my jam because I love playing Ninja. It's super amped. So in Mysteria, there are 7 universally accepted arts. And you've got 3 major arts and 4 minor arts. So the major arts are the art of the signs, the art of the hand, and the art of the sparrow. So those are the major arts. And then for minor arts, you've got the art of the serpent, the art of the earth, art of the stone, and art of the willow. And with all those arts, there's people called grandmasters who are sort of just like roaming subject matter experts that travel around the land and share their knowledge with people. And we're going to touch on a little bit of that in-depth lore. So I'm excited because that just feudal Japan, I just love all that. So stay tuned for that lore video. We're going to hit on Mysteria. So, Blake, starting out, results so far, what we've seen from Road to Nationals and what we're sort of expecting to maybe come out of round 1 or Nationals as a whole. So, what do you think? What do you got? I know you've got that stuff laid out in front of you, right?
Yep. Yeah, I went up and hunted down. So I think first off, huge shout out goes out to Matt Rogers for working around all of the COVID restrictions they're currently running and the size of gatherings and things like that. He went out of his way to, make a huge commitment to the community. And instead of running one big event, he ran 10 small events to fulfill the government's COVID restriction requirements and still be able to host Road to Nationals events, which I think is just those are the kind of things that you like to see in a community, people going above and beyond. We'll talk a little bit about that with locals and what we're trying to do too. And I think that's what's going to make this community grow in spite of being, most of the world being in some form of quarantine or restriction. But the results from the last Road to Nationals before they head off to Nationals, it was interesting because we saw a lot of brutes. It was a very brute heavy field. So there were 8 decks: Dash, Guardian, 3 brutes, 2 ninjas, and a warrior. So the first round, Dash versus Guardian, 2 brute versus ninja matchups in the first round, and then a brute versus warrior. In the semifinal, it was brute versus brute, warrior versus Dash, and then the final was warrior versus brute, and warrior took it down. I thought it was super interesting to see brute. I feel like that was 100% probably a meta call by people. It's the classic, what do I think everyone's going to play, so what should I bring in response kind of thing.
Yeah, which you get like in any major competitive card game. It's all about the meta call. Yeah, good shout out, because I think that Matt sort of taking that on and just making that work is just a prime example. I mean, he's an amazing player first and foremost, right? But I think it's obvious that he really cares about the community and making sure that stuff is going to still function and go off. And I mean, even as responsive as he was like way back when we were asking stateside, like, is there any chance you could reschedule an event and maybe make it so that we could join you guys? And he, like, within the day was like, oh yeah, no, we'll just do an event like Sunday morning our time. So Saturday evening, Jason got to play and everything. So he cares about the community a lot. And that's really cool to see, like, community heads sort of owning pieces like that.
I think that stuff's huge. I think people just buying into the community is really big from the get-go.
Yeah. So I think that, I don't know, I've been playing against Brute, which is, I feel like inherently Brute has a little bit of a disadvantage into Warrior. I can't help but feel like Warrior's really strong. And I know that our Australian counterparts think that, or they've tested and found that Wizard sort of has the advantage against Warrior a little bit. So I'm really curious to see what actually comes out of Nationals, to see what people are running, how they're running it,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that there's so many different ways you can play too, like more control, more aggro, like just within the different classes, that
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gonna come down to how people are playing the decks too. So
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Warrior's probably pretty straightforward, right? You play it more
Yeah.
than
I mean,
anyone else.
yeah, I think Warrior. I think it's the classic thing where decks are probably most powerful in a specific archetype. Like there's a specific archetype that will probably they will probably do their best work and be the most efficient in. I think given an amount of effort, people can find ways to alter them. I think Brute is a prime example of a deck that has probably shifted the style of build as it's aged into Crucible. And now it almost feels like it's doing what Bravo did and doing it better than Bravo does it now. I think Brute got cards that do now what Bravo and Guardian was doing last set to people, which was having effects and things that can carry over. And Bravo is reliant on dominating to block to get people to do it. But I think that's where maybe you even have a bigger advantage in Brute in your ability to play a control game, because Bravo can still get blocked with 2 cards with 1 from Arsenal. And if you have a really good turn with Brute where you can just pile like 11 up and then just get all intimidates stacked, or they have 2 or 3 cards in hand, you swing with something, give it go again, and then go on that go again, you double intimidate. You can basically take their hand. And if they have no Arsenal, you can guarantee damage gets pushed through.
Yeah.
So it has an ability to play slow and to play methodical and play into matchups that want to maybe try to be the aggressor and get on top of it. And that, which I think, again, that's why it was a meta call, was because people maybe thought that the meta was faster and they thought this was a way to kind of slow it down. But Brute can absolutely 100%, OTK somebody from, 20 life almost, it feels like, when they kind of stack 2 things. You hit those scab skins for 2 or 3 action points, you got the right cards in hand, and it's going to feel real painful
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
get
That could be.
pummeled,
Yeah.
because they're not relying on the combos like other people are to get their go agains and contingent go agains. They just roll the scab skins, hit the nuts, and hit a 6, and boom, they're off to the races, because there's
Right.
nothing you can do about it. You can't block out of the go again. You can't, there are, everybody else kind of has these situations where they'll get to a contingent go again, which is why the Brute hitting that 6 and getting just 3 straight up action points is so strong.
Yeah, but again, that's dice though, man. That's like if they
Yeah.
get
Oh
it,
yeah.
they get it. If they
Absolutely.
don't, they don't. But I think that yeah, like getting like losing 2 to 3 cards to intimidate and then getting hit with a pummel and being forced to drop it. It's like, well, I hope that you don't have much to do with that second action point, because if you do, it's just all happening. I've got nothing I can do. So, I mean, especially late game, if your equipment's all broken and you don't have like anything to really answer that with, it's just can be painful, especially with the new toys that Brute got. The I don't even know the Brute cards that well, but is that an older card, or is that what are the Crucible Brute cards? I don't even know.
They got what, barraging Bighorn and some
Yeah.
of that stuff. I mean, it, they just got some things that stacked with his ability. They got a lot of intimidate. It's just so strong with their intimidate, and that I think the intimidate is so strong too, because with dominate, I just get my choice, right? Like if you dominate, I get to block with 1 card, or I get to block with 1 card from hand and 1 from arsenal. I'm making my decisions for my next turn based on what I have in hand and a lot of information. Intimidate feels bad because in classic fashion, any game where it's a random discard or a random set aside feels bad, because it always feels like they hit the wrong card at the wrong time. If they
Yeah.
swing at you with something small and you block with a card you didn't want, and now you have 3 cards left in hand, they're coming at you with the second attack, they double intimidate you, and you think to yourself, okay, I'm willing to block with 2 of these 3 cards, but one of these cards is completely and utterly my next turn.
Necessary. Yeah, for next
Yeah, if
turn.
I lose
And
this
that's the
card,
one that
my
they
next turn is
pull,
basically gone.
or that's
And
the one
then
that
they
they
double
leave in
intimidate.
your
Yeah,
hand. Yeah.
that's the one they leave, and then you're left with the do I block 3 of this, or do I just eat the whole thing?
Yeah.
And especially
I'll
late
be
game, you're forced into blocking cards you don't want to block with.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't like playing against Brute because it's the stuff I don't like. It's randomness. It's
Yeah.
RNG, and it,
I it especially hurts. I think it hurts Ninja more than anybody because your turns need to be more determined by you, whereas
mm-hmm.
typically with Warrior, like for me with Warrior, it doesn't feel horrible to be intimidated because
Because you
chances
got three
are,
cards that effectively do
yeah,
something similar. You're plussing
yep,
as an attack reaction, or you're giving go again. Like so,
yep,
if you lose one of them, have to block with one of them. That
mhm,
you don't feel as bad. Like there's lots of
yeah,
redundancies in the Warrior deck, which I think
yeah,
we were
and
talking about the other night. But
yeah, I think it has redundancies in the deck, and then it just has a lot of stuff that makes it mega consistent because that's what it's trying to do.
yep,
And as a result, oftentimes intimidates don't feel terrible because just whatever I'm left with, I'm just gonna block with it. And there's very few times where I'm left with a card against Brute where I'm like, oh, I can't block with this one card, and just
all
it
right,
usually feels okay.
yeah.
So
So I looked them up. The Beast Within a Massacre was what I was thinking of. The
okay,
Primeval
oh,
Bellow must be an older
Beast
card.
Within is
Yeah, it's silly,
it,
man.
it
Especially if
feels
you
so
discard it.
bad. Oh no. I played it against Jason on stream the other night and it got discarded from his hand for an effect. And then he ended up with like 5 cards back in hand. It was just felt so or 4 cards back in hand and one in
Yeah,
arsenal. I was just like, what just happened? Like, how did you go from like this just doesn't make me feel good. This feels so bad.
yeah.
It enables their turns to be so strong, which I think is again what makes it probably feel like a better version of Guardian right now is the fact that what Guardian was trying to do is block, 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 hit big, but
Mm-hmm.
it was very like card contingent on what it was capable of pulling off a lot of times because
Yep.
it was trying to set up a very specific combo to stack multiple things, get a dominate, and hit for a big swing. Whereas Brute has more of that warrior vibe where a lot of its cards are just really good and it's able to kind of play with what's given to it and it doesn't need to set up these turns for multiple turns. It just kind of needs to once it draws you can kind of make a decision. It has more decision trees in it than Guardian.
Yeah. No, speaking of decision trees, playing Viscera on stream this week. Dude, that the cards that got added, my brain was melted after just because I played that and then I was like, I'm not playing another game of this on stream. Like I felt like it was miserable to sit through. And then I played Ninja, which I just played slow because I always play slow like that. Like, but dude, the new lines with the new tools that Viscera got, I was not ready. I should have looked at the deck. I was like, I played Viscera last set. Like I know generally what I'm gonna do. Just like some new options. It's like nope, entirely new things to run through. So yeah, that was fun, but was not ready for stream. Was not stream quality content. I don't think. But
Yeah, those are the decks that right. You need a bunch of reps to get really comfortable.
mm-hmm.
Like that. It's that's how things. I feel like that's how Wizard is too. And um, you're just trying to figure out which of the 52 decision tree branches you're going to take, and then after you pick that one, there's 13 more that you have
Yeah,
to just choose from.
I'll be honest. It's the big hiccup for me was the become the Arc card. The zero
Yeah,
cost 3 discard a attack action, search your deck for a Rune Blade non attack, or discard a non attack and search your deck for a Rune Blade attack action. Just with the new stuff that they got, it's like I don't even know what I'm searching for. Like
yeah,
discarding a non attack action, I'm like, which attack action do I pull now? But
yeah.
with what
That
I've
the
got in hand, it's crazy.
the decision trees have definitely grown with
Yeah,
Crucible. I think for
which is cool.
everything.
It's super fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's the depth of the game, which is what's healthy for the game and pushes the game forward and continues to make things more interesting. Even the addition of characters. We played Blitz at locals this week, and
Mm-hmm.
it was funny because I played 2 brutes, but I played 2 different brutes, which is feels it
Mm-hmm.
is felt bad because I was playing brute and I didn't have any tech for it because both decks that I played were both decks that I was playing for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
versions of them. So I was like, yeah, I was just trying to figure out ratios in this deck. I wasn't trying to figure out how to offset KO. So
Right. Gambler's gloves. Just run gambler's gloves.
yeah, so I did that, and he rolled a 6. I gamblers gloved him, and he rolled a 5. So um,
Not much you can do about that.
when someone hits
Not
the 1 and
much.
3 twice in a row, you
Yeah.
just eat it.
Yep. No, I think so. Do you have any? So I think we both agree that Warrior. At least for me, I think Warrior's probably the strongest. It's the most prevalent deck in the field right now. Whether or not it's
Yeah.
like the strongest is up for debate, like whether Wizard outplays it or wins it, depending on like what your Wizard build looks like. But I think that it's probably the most prevalent. It's the most universally acknowledged strong deck.
Yeah. I think it was fed, it was already a really
Mm-hmm.
strong deck, and then it was fed tools to make it stronger. And as a result, it's
And more
just,
consistent.
yeah, I think that's the thing that's the most scary about it, is how consistent it is. It's just so consistent at what it does. And it's trying to do, it's there's the classic deck building puzzle to solve, right? Do you build a deck that does a lot of things well and it's super toolboxy because you want to be able to play well into everything, but maybe you don't have an incredibly strong matchup into any one thing per se? Or
Mm-hmm.
do you want to build a deck that does one thing really well and it does it so efficiently that it doesn't matter what you do to me, I'm going to do my one thing so well that you can't offset it? And I think that that's kind of even where like the brute decks that have, that showed up at this road to nationals kind of feel like, is they've definitely dug their heels into this ability to play a lot of defense, keep
Mm-hmm.
the pressure on with the club, so they're keeping your hand from always being 4 on your turn, trying to play a lot of defense, and then eventually having that turn where the stars align, and then they just intimidate you and then throw 15 damage at you, and there's nothing you can do about it because you have no cards left. And then they move on to the next turn and they go back to protecting themselves, and they kind
Mm-hmm.
of do the turtle effect where they're playing a long slow game and they're comfortable with it. And
Turtle
it
and
just
Dirtle, baby.
turtle and dirtle. And and I think it just does it well. I think
Yeah.
that's why the brute is doing well right now, and you're seeing brute pop up because what it does really well now.
Any sleeper picks? Any decks you think that are gonna come in? I feel like you've got a couple that are on your mind that you've been either toying with personally or just thinking might be good. But any decks that you
I
make top 8 that you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this might be cool to see what they run in it.
Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if a really good Azalea build did really well,
Yeah.
because I think when built with an approach of being aggro, like not playing defense, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of in, what I like Ranger because it kind of is it's an alternate version and does a lot of the things like you see in um Warrior really well. It's really aggressive. It gets on top of you and stays on top of you. The difference
Mm-hmm.
is it's not necessarily throwing these reaction things. It's demanding a lot of your hand because it
Yep.
presents you with this question of, how would you like to take this negative effect on your turn?
Right.
And if you don't want to take it, are you willing to dump your whole hand for it? Because I'm going to throw a 10 or 11 at you, and the effect will be every time you play an action, you lose a life, or every time, or you don't
Mm-hmm.
get your effect, your hero effect, or
Yeah.
you only get one action. Like it's effects are so devastating that it puts people in a really difficult spot. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think the right build for it is a really aggro, really strong, playing come to fights and nimbleisms and plunder
Yeah.
runs, and using all of your little tricks to play things out of the arsenal. I think having the take aim to reload to put a plunder run in to play a plunder run out, and then
Yeah.
being able to death dealer or bracers an arrow in to play it out is absolutely the strongest way to play plunder run in the game, because I can in my turn have nothing in arsenal to start and play a plunder run out
And you get
that's
those
in my hand.
benefits. You get the pluses. You get the
Yeah.
card draw. You get That's
It makes the plunder run the best version of the plunder run,
and
and I can
plunder
do
run
it from hand.
also. I mean, that just incentivizes them to block at that point too, because you're giving them a card draw if it hits on top
Yeah,
of using your hero ability. Like it's
playing
just
I was
yeah.
when I played Jason, I think either on stream or the other day we were just playing some games, and I had a turn where I think I had that and sleep dart stacked up, and it was like, hey, guess what? Oh, and then I think I even increased the tension on him. So it's
Yeah.
like, hey, you
Defense
can't play
reactions.
defense
Yeah.
reactions. If it hits, I draw a card, and if it hits, you don't get your hero effect next turn. It's
Mm-hmm.
like everything could be bad about it was bad. So basically, I just negated your turn, because even if you block it all, it's going to cost you your hand. If you don't block it all, then you lose all your effects. I draw a card. I have options for Arsenal.
And you're taking
It's
an ass ton of damage. So
yeah, you're just gonna eat
let's not
10.
forget about
So
that little
let's not forget.
piece
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
You're hitting them for 10 to 12 damage. It's like,
Let me just
oh
throw double digits
god,
at you.
yeah. So yeah,
So
I think
I
that's a
don't
good
think
call.
Ranger. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I think that
Ranger. Yeah, yeah, because it does well into a lot of stuff. It does well into all of the different. It plays pretty well across the board. It feels pretty good into a lot of things. I'll be curious to see if Dash was like the strongest deck ever at the beginning. Everybody figured out how to play it, but it still exists, and it's one of those decks that when firing is just disgusting.
Oh yeah, it goes so wide with
So
attacks. I mean, it's worth noting that was very strong and prevalent in New Zealand and Australia,
yeah,
like in that meta specifically.
yeah. We don't see a ton of Dash around here. I don't see people playing it a ton in stateside, like from the streams that I see and things like that. So it's which is interesting. I don't know if that's just people have figured out how to play it or if people don't want to play it. I really don't know what the aversion to Dash is.
It got some cool stuff, but it didn't
Yeah.
have. I feel like there's what came out with Crucible, and we'll use this as like a segue into like Unlimited and stuff too. But what came out with Crucible was either giving an archetype a lot more of something that it liked to have, or so like Warrior, for example, right? Like it gave a lot more attack reactions, stuff that gave it go again, just stuff that enabled the deck in general. It gave tools to decks that had gaps in what they needed. So like Rune Blade, Wizard. I think Ninja kind of falls in that category too. I'm curious to see if Ninja doesn't like sneak deeper into the runnings, because like Ninja was notorious in the last meta, or the last like competitive meta, for making top 8, and then if you're a top 8 player, you know how to counter what Ninja's doing, and you're smart enough to play around that. So you saw a ton of it making top 8 and not a ton of it, top 4 or winning necessarily, right? So I wonder if Ninja with some of its new stuff kind of squeaks through that and starts topping a little more. But I think that Mech didn't really fall into either of those categories. Like it didn't get anything groundbreaking that Mech was missing. Mech was already really strong, and it didn't get a ton of stuff that like enabled it to do what it wanted to do. Like the Plasma Purifier is awesome. It's a really cool card. But I mean, is there other stuff that makes you go like, ooh? So like the Visiertronic Model I.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, yep, that's
that's
bad.
cool. That's really good.
Yeah,
but
I think the Plasma Purifier is a little weird too, because it is just a +1, so it turns a 2 on the gun into a 3. That doesn't really change a lot with what it's accomplishing, so it can feel kind of weird.
If you're getting all of the induction chambers out though, and you're swinging that much, like,
yeah. I mean, it's pushing through.
Feels pretty good.
Yeah, it's pushing through more damage. I think it's just more the fact that turning 2s into 3s when you're doing it a lot obviously helps push a damage here and there through, but at the same time, if they're choosing to block all those 2s, they're blocking all those 3s more than likely. But that's just like for me personally. I don't think it's good enough to feel even remotely broken or to feel like it has that much oomph. I think Magnetic Shockwave, I always go back and forth between it's cute and it's really strong. In a boost heavy deck, if you can fire off 2 boosts and they only have 2 things left, I mean, it feels amazing to hit
Break
somebody with it and force the tunic block.
Feels bad.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like you have to see it at the right time for it to matter, because if you see it too early and they have a bunch of stuff to block and you've boosted twice and they have got all 4 armor pieces up, they're just going to throw the stuff out there that doesn't break.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Like it's a good card, but it's 100% a timing card. And for me, like if you really think about it personally, like if you see it 3/4 of the way through the game, sure, late game it feels good to break their tunic, but at the same time, by that point, their tunic has been so impactful that who cares if it's broken for 2 more turns? It feels good, but it doesn't feel great. I think that's the issue, is the cards feel good, but yeah.
Moral of the story is I don't think that Mech got, the plethora of toys that some of the other decks did.
Yeah. It didn't get anything that broke it more. It didn't get anything that pushed it to another tier, which obviously it was already
very strong. So.
Very, very strong. So it's just what it does, and everybody knows what it does. I think that's part of the issue now, is at this point, mech, everybody knows what mech does, and it doesn't have any cutesy little tricks.
So does this mean that you're now going to get to play mech if it's not like a top
I don't know.
deck?
When we played it on Tuesday, and we played it once on stream. We played it. I played
stream,
it
yeah.
on locals, and I just wanted to like pull my hair out because it didn't feel it didn't feel like I was making a lot of decisions. It felt like I was just doing what I had the deck on autopilot, and I was just doing what it needed to do.
This
which
is what's in hand.
Isn't
this is what I'm boosting you with. This is
it's like cool. I have 3 induction chambers, so I'm just going to pitch everything. We're going to shoot for 2 4 times. Like that. It's just like that to me. That doesn't appeal to me as a player. So I struggle with the deck.
Yeah,
playing it, piloting
it's really gross that it can do that.
It is really gross that it can do it, but
yeah,
which makes me sad because I love steampunk aesthetic. So
yeah, no, I think it'll be curious. I'd be curious to see if like any alternate builds come out for it with like that rifle.
Yeah.
So
I have a build for it. I haven't tested it yet.
Someone's tap dancing upstairs with me right now. Apparently. Sorry if that came through. Yeah. So I think that with that, we'll talk a little bit about the unlimited run coming out too, because that is, although it might not affect the meta as much, other than maybe making tunics a little cheaper, stuff like that. I mean, we're all playing TTS for the most part right now anyways. So it's not drastically changing what people can run. But I think that, making some of those more sought after cards just more playable in general will be really good. But do you have any thoughts on secondary market coming out of this unlimited? Because that's coming out here in 2 months, less than 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, I think first off, accessibility to products will be good for some people. I mean, I know we tend to lean into the mindset that I prefer to play with cards that I have. I will say I've made a little bit of an exception with this game just because right now without unlimited, once unlimited passes, I'm just going to, everything that I've been testing with that I don't have access to, I'm buy, or I'm going to get boxes for, which is why I have kind of broken my rule of don't play with something on TTS that you don't own in person. I do know that like there's a tournament this weekend online that someone's hosting and a bunch of people are playing in it. And I know they're doing the thing that we had experience with in DBS where they're going to have people take pictures of what they own. I get that. I also don't get that right now. I know we talked about it locals potentially doing something where we'd prefer people play with cards they own. I don't think that that's fair to do right now. It's not fair to ask somebody.
Not right now, at least. Like I get that in like a competitive sense after Unlimited's come out, but like right now,
after Unlimited,
I'm really just not buying it because I mean I'm not going to spend the extra money for the alpha print because I do think that alpha print cards will hold value more than the Unlimited run cards. Like getting those cold foils and stuff. I just want to be able to play the card for the most part. I think you and I are pretty similar in that regard. I do like to foil out like my rare play sets and stuff because I like to get my deck nice and shiny. But as far as like Tunic, give me the non-foil Crucible Tunic, which we did. We ordered from like some guys in Australia. But I think that cards are going to get cheaper when Unlimited comes out. Like just generally. Alpha, I think, will hold value pretty well. I think that there might be a little less demand for the alpha once it comes out, but you're going to see that price hold a little better over the next years.
I think collectors always have their say in a market, and I think that that's going to matter. I think one thing that we've talked about a little bit and has come up as a point of conversation, and I'll be interested to see is if Unlimited has identical pull rates and identical box style and pack style to the alpha print, or if what they're trying to do is just get the product into players' hands, and this is catering. The alpha print stuff caters to the collector in games, which every game has collectors. The question is, if Unlimited is catering to the player base and the people who simply want to play cards, do they make it more accessible to those players by increasing pull rates?
Okay. You were talking about this earlier too, just like in our message thread. But so what's your concern with that? Because why would you want them to increase pull rate? I mean, except for the obvious reasons of like people just get more of the good toys. But do you think that they basically deviate from like the rarity, how they've got it broken down, and just like you can get a couple legendaries in a box type thing? Or What do you?
I guess I'm not as concerned about legendaries. I think legendaries are fair and fine because I think with how many there are in comparison to Crucible, I think
Mm-hmm.
what you'll end up with is people able to trade even for what they want or sell and then rebuy
Yeah.
effectively at a zero loss, a $0 net for them to get the thing that they need for their deck in legendary versus what they open sometimes. My thought is more, I guess, geared towards the volume. It obviously Crucible had an insane pull rates as far as like you got a ton of Majestics. Now, granted, that was offset because supers were gone, which is fair.
Yeah.
But in the
Oh,
reprint,
you're
you're going to
talking.
have supers. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess the question is, they're not going to change rarities on decks or on cards per se. I guess my thought is, are they going to increase the number of Majestics, say, because you you want to get more cards in players' hands and they'll now have access to them because the alpha print is going to hold value because it's the alpha print versus this is just to cater to getting access to the player base. This is
Yeah,
just
I get
giving
that.
people the opportunity to be able to play the game.
I don't think that them having the pull rates that they had though is detrimental to the player base. I obviously more
No,
is
no, no.
better. More is always better, right?
Yeah.
But like they said in one of their articles that effectively the reason they differentiated the super rare versus majestic was just for secondary
For
market
market value.
purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so like I don't think that they need to increase the majestic because essentially if you look at like the majestics that came out this set, some of them could have very well been just labeled super rare, but they just made them all
Yeah.
majestics for simplicity's sake. So I don't think that like in my mind the super rares are just like they're the cheap majestics. That's all that
Yeah.
super rare means. So I don't think that they need to up the majestic number or quantity in the boxes. I think that people are still gonna be able to get what they want to play with. Man.
I think if anything, I guess my thought is, and I saw somebody post about this, and I think this is really true. And this is me speaking as somebody who, is 100% a second market, player. Like
You play around in the
Dane and
secondary
anybody else on our
market as
team.
much, yeah.
Yeah. As much as I do that game, like
Yep.
I sell heaps and heaps of cards. That's
Yeah.
just what I do.
We all
And
play
I
for our
like,
hobby. That's how we
I
do
like it. It's 100%. It's part of the hobby for me. It pays for
Mm-hmm.
the hobby. It's great. My thing is, I guess, more I would like to see the market shift into a place where value is based on meta and value is based on game, and actual value of the card. There are some supers that should be $3 supers, but there are other supers that should be $10 supers. And there are some majestics that should be $10 majestics and some that should be 30. That's the nature of a game. If a majestic is insanely good, I have zero issue with it being $30 versus
Mm-hmm.
$10 or $15. I just think that's the way it should be. I think that personally, I think that equipment being 15 and also something that's 3 of in a deck being 15 is kind of hilarious to me
Yeah, it's
because
funny. It's a little goofy right now.
yeah, I think that that's kind of a silly thing. I actually think that the 3 of in a deck can be way more impactful in games a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times. Like if that 3 of in the deck is more impactful, don't price it the same as a piece of equipment. Like just don't do it. That's not
Right.
that's like saying, if you sell a sedan, all sedans have to be $17,000. It's like, well, that's not true because not all sedans are created equal, right? Different
Right.
companies make different cars with different bells and whistles. They have different values and they're evaluated
Yeah.
based
No,
on the market.
we get it. We get it.
And I think that that's where, that's what I would like to see personally is
Yeah.
even if they don't change the pull rates, I would like to see the market change to being priced according to meta. If brute is really good, I have no issue with stores upping the brute prices by a couple bucks because they're in demand, supply and demand. It's really simple.
No, I know. So
You
how
know,
do you see that? It's got to start with like these online suppliers, right? Like
correct.
Top
Yeah,
Deck
I think so.
TCG, like or
Right.
Fab Armory,
Fab Armory,
Foundry,
Midtown
like,
Merchant,
yeah,
all these.
whatever
Yeah.
it ends up being, like it starts with them, right? Because I'm not going to be able to go online and sell this really good Majestic for $24 if
If
they're
they can
selling
get
it
it
for
from
10
Top Deck.
and they're
Yeah.
selling all of it for 10 and everyone's
Right.
10. Unless, I mean, that or I guess it's just, this is still so fresh and new
Yes.
that I've never been through this transition before. We came into DBS after the secondary market was already alive and popping
Right. It
and
was,
had their stuff established. Like it was just very clear what things were selling for and how it fluctuated. Like you got to become
Yep.
comfortable with the fluctuation in that secondary market. And I think that it's really interesting seeing everything evenly valued. Like you're talking about how it's
so
kind of
weird.
humorous. Like it's humorous
Yeah,
to see
it
this
makes
stuff
me laugh.
priced how it is. But how long does that take? How long does that transition take? Like how long is it going to take
Yeah.
for people to buy out the hot majestic, sell it for more
Hmm.
because it's good, or that's just a card that people want, not even buying it out like maliciously trying to like spike
Yeah.
prices, but I mean like just people buy it because they want to run it that bad, and then for that to then be like go back and be posted for more money on like the
Yeah.
Facebook secondary market sites and pages. Like what's that look like? How long do we have
If if you
of these goofy
yeah.
prices?
So if you ask me, I think there's a few things that are causing it. I think number one is the alpha print. Alpha print affects it because they've proven that supply and demand and valuation is affected by availability. So
Yep.
that's fine. So that exists as a point in the timeline, right? That like at this point when we found out about alpha print, people were able to change valuations of cards. Cool. So we have
Mm-hmm.
it as there's a marker that indicates we can do that in the market. I think the second thing is accessibility. Like right now, there's just not a lot of product out there. Like it's pretty dry until Unlimited shows up because it's hard to find certain cards. There are a couple Majestics and Supers that I'm trying to hunt down for decks just to have from
Yeah.
from the original boxes that honestly I've just given up on. I have printed proxies in my deck to just play with in person
Mm-hmm.
that I'm just using because I just can't find it. Like I at this point I can't even find somebody who will sell me a glint of Quicksilver. Like it's not that I don't want to pay it. I just can't find it. It's absolutely
Mm-hmm.
hilarious that I can't find a card that I need in my deck. So I think that's part of it. The market is kind of funky because of that. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think the amount of play that's happening affects it because
Yeah.
there's not a demand because people don't need it. I think if more tournaments online and more locals after Unlimited comes out, if people started to push that you have to physically own the cards in order to play the deck,
Yep.
and people need to take pictures of it, I think that creates a more stable market.
Yep.
I know in this game too, if I'm being completely honest, I think some of it is the community. Everybody's kind of trying to be nice, which is fine. I appreciate a nice, kind community.
Yep.
In DBS, the market is pretty cutthroat, and I'm going to be completely honest. As somebody who likes to buy and sell cards, I have zero issue with the cutthroat market
Yeah.
because I think it rewards people who read the meta well and see what's good, or they just work hard to grind and buy things cheap. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine. I don't think that's a problem, you know. So I think it'll take some time still. I
Yeah.
think after Unlimited comes out, I think there will be hopefully there will be an adjustment in the market based
What
on
I would love to see is once Unlimited comes out and is readily available, that people start saying you need to own the cards to play it. I think that's
yes.
totally fine and feasible.
I think that's fair. Yep.
Yep.
I think it's fair.
And because I do think that the secondary market does need to get hashed out. I think that the alpha run messed with it too. Like it probably delayed
Yeah.
the
It messed it up
prices
pretty
getting,
bad. Yeah.
but I mean, not messed it up in a bad way, just messed up the process of the prices getting to their
Yeah.
actual value points.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
so I think that
I think things had like before the alpha print announcement, like if you look back,
Mhm.
things had pretty much settled. Like a lot of the legendaries were $60 to $80 based on what
Yeah,
people
but there
thought
were
was
some
good.
legendaries that were going for more. So legendaries was actually the
Yeah.
example I was going to use
Legendaries is a
of
good example.
cards that like all the legendary equipment pieces, like they were selling for very varying prices, which makes sense because some
Yep.
legendaries are a lot better and are more expensive, and that's how eventually it needs to trickle down through the majestics. I mean, rares. I mean, I feel like they're always going to be.
Yeah. I think rare and down typically are pretty level
Yeah.
until something is broken in a deck and that deck becomes tier 0. Then rares tend to kind of hold their value. I think supers and majestics absolutely 100% should be priced differently. I don't think you should just say all supers $6, all majestics 15. I think that's just absolutely asinine. Like,
did they? So have they announced that they're
so
keeping
silly.
they're keeping the rarity differentiation on those? Because I know that was just for those sets and everything going forward. There's not going to be supers
I would
anymore, but other
I would assume that in the unlimited print
Yeah.
they'll continue to have supers
supers.
in the
What color do you think they'll be?
reprint.
That's the real
I don't
question.
know.
What color
That's
is
the
that
real
super going to be?
question. I don't know. I honestly don't even know what it's like. Blue and red and gray are the colors.
So segueing into our local experience. So
yeah,
we've I'm on week 2. Our locals are on week 3. Correct? This is your second week as well, Blake.
I missed week 1.
Yep. Just because it was still fluctuation of dates and stuff like that, we couldn't make it work.
Mm-hmm.
But
yep.
week 1, how many people did they have coming out for it? Six, 7?
Six or seven, I think.
Since then, it's
It's been
been
six to eight every week.
yeah. So
So.
basically, what we did, or what Chris Bates did, guy up here in Minnesota, sort of ran point on that because he's been chomping at the bit for I think some games, and he was pretty. I think he started out opposed to playing online. He really wanted to adhere to the playing in the flesh and blood, and totally respect that. But seeing, I think a lot of people are kind of coming to terms with the fact that it's probably not going to happen soon. So they're like, well, we just don't want to play. So he set up a Discord for us, and if you want to check out sort of the layout that we use for that Discord, we've got our Discord that's been linked in the majority of our show descriptions, and you can see sort of how that's laid out. And all Chris did basically is take a copy of that, make the tables, make each of the chat rooms a table, and then we've just been playing on TTS. So check out our Discord, get an idea for what it looks like. It's super straightforward to run the locals, and with the Play Anywhere program that Legendary Studios has put out, like it's really easy. Honestly, it's been really smooth, and getting people to come out and play together, and like getting that interaction, like everyone playing on their tables, and then just like bouncing up to like the general chat and talking about how their games went and stuff. Like it's kind of that locals vibe, which is really nice to have. I'll be honest, like I was worried that it was going to be a long time before I was going to feel like that sense of talking to someone that I haven't talked to in a couple weeks type interaction. So it's been good.
Yeah, I think this week, even like, this week we had somebody who it was his first time he ever played the game, like actually like more of a constructed deck and something that wasn't just an out of the box hero deck. And I think that's proof that it works, just having a venue to do it. Most of your players for a game like this are probably going to be people who play other games or have played other games in the past, and they're probably accustomed to the locals vibe and what it looks like and how that goes. So giving them just a location to land is really good. I think the fact that you can set it up with the Play Anywhere to actually have the software, you can put your numbers in, it gives you matchups. It's not just randomly getting on and playing casual games. It's saying, hey, and I know Chris's intention, which I think was the right approach, is to say, hey, let's take the approach of the first 3 to 4 weeks. Let's have, it's just going to be more casual. We're going to come play, we're going to use the software, we're going to do matchups, but we're not doing anything crazy. And then having an LGS that's doing just a couple packs. And I think that might actually be guys paying for them. Like Chris bought a box.
Chris just supporting it.
Yeah, Chris just bought a box, which again, I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. I'm saying that's 100% what Chris does. I mean, with Destiny, he, when we played Destiny, he was really good at community organizing, to the point that we played a game that wasn't really supported by the company. So there wasn't a way other than you just tracked your weeklies for the sake of tracking your weeklies. And he made something of it and created a whole bracket system and did a big event every year where you actually had to qualify by playing in enough locals, which is so far above and beyond what most people would do that it's absolutely mind-boggling. But I think it's proof of the fact that if you're willing to put in the time, it resulted in probably the biggest local Destiny community in the world being here in Minneapolis. I mean, we had locals 6 to 7 nights a week in the
it was
cities,
crazy. There were nights
absurd.
With multiple locals at like different game shops, and everyone was getting 8 to 10 players.
Yeah. It was, and you would fire, there were locals that had 15 to 20 players coming out on a weeknight to play tournaments.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was super fun community, and I think that having people that care like that and kind of do that above and beyond organization is what made that possible. And I think that it's super feasible in Fab. So hearing people talk about, like is there any groups locally that are going, like definitely reach out and see. Like I've seen people post on the Reddit, I've seen people post on the Facebook page, like asking if there's any groups available. And if there is, awesome, get with them, start just spreading the word. I think I'm going to make up flyers or something, or talk to Chris about it. But I think putting something up about our Discord or like the Minnesota Discord at the local shop at the source or something somewhere, just to like give people, because that's the one thing I think it's missing right now, is that you don't get those people walking by the tables that are like, oh, that's kind of a cool looking game.
Yeah, that game looks interesting.
I think, but having some sort of advertisement for the fact that like we're active, we're playing, I think that'd be super helpful. So I think that'd be
it's a lot to ask, and I get that it's a lot to ask of people. Not everybody is as willing to dive in, and I'm paying for a box in order to just divvy that out to locals is definitely a lot to ask of people. But I think at the same time, if you have 4 guys who want to play, and everybody, you've got people who want to play, if someone's willing to run points on that, or you're willing to rotate the purchases, or you find a game store that you pay. I think that that's even a possibility. If you went to a game store and you said, hey, we want to pay a normal weekly fee, we want to pay $5 or $10, we're just asking that you would support it with packs, and people can come in, and when they get their packs they can pay you for their weekly, or they can call in and pay ahead. I mean, people have credit cards, you pay over, pay over the phone all the time for stuff, for pre-orders, right? Like you can pre-order stuff all the time from game shops. Just do it that way. And you can do that. I think if you're willing to do it, I think the big linchpin in the whole system is that as players and as community, we have to be the ones who are pushing it, and we have to be the ones willing to stick our necks out and make the effort to organize it and get it going, and ask stores. You got to ask a store to do it. The worst they can do is tell you no, right? That they won't do
Yep.
it. And in that case, then you find an alternate solution to it. You try to do something yourself.
Which I think is going to be a stop loss thing, just for the foreseeable, like not for the foreseeable future, but for the immediate future. I think that community is going to have to step up a little bit, but I think that just from what I've seen of our locals, once people see that the game's going, it's a really, and Legend Story Studios is so supportive of the local game shop community as a whole, that I think that as soon as people dip their toe into that pool, they're like, this is a good temperature, I'm gonna just jump in. I feel like that's not going to be a problem going forward. So
and I will say that, like, our experience with Destiny is that when a community does that, even with a company who doesn't support it and doesn't put their energy behind it, what we saw is, in my opinion, as somebody who's played games for a long time and as somebody who's active in multiple communities right now, the one thing I will always say and rave about with Destiny is it had the absolute best community that I've ever been a part of and ever experienced, simply because the player base took so much ownership of their responsibility to organize and be motivated to keep the game alive and to push the game to be strong, that as a result, like, everyone was very interactive with one another. Like, when we had Worlds, it was just the absolute coolest experience to go and spend time with other people who love the game, because that was the community who was driving it. And in this situation, we have the added benefit that if the community is that adamant about making it great, Legend Story Studios will do everything in their power to support us as a community. And that's a really good feeling to have, that a company will back us with that, will probably, if match us with the energy, if not out energy us, because they want to see the game succeed as bad as we do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think that was about all we had to say on community. Definitely get out there and just try to build it as best you can. Even if you're creating something from nothing, start with 2 people, play games every week, and then just add people you work with, whatever. I know that there's a guy that I work with that I'm going to ask him if he's interested in the game, because I know that Jason did that with a buddy that he works with, and that's just, work is a really easy, something that people are still doing interaction wise. So that'll be good. And that's sort of everything that we need to talk on. Anything that we missed that you wanted to hit on?
I don't think so. I think we covered what we wanted to talk about, and just more than anything, get your locals going. Locals are what drive games to exist. So if your locals are healthy, then the game will be healthy. So whatever it takes.
Easy. If you got questions, definitely reach out, ask us.
Yeah.
Just jump into our live stream on Tuesdays. We don't get anything for having people in our live streams other than like, oh hey, people joined us. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, makes us feel good. Makes us want to keep doing stuff like that.
We get warm tinglies, but we don't get money.
But I think that's like a really good opportunity. Just ask us questions about how we got it started. Jump in, be like, hey, like, how does this Discord thing work? And we'll walk you through it. We don't care. We don't care what our Tuesday nights look like, as long as it has something to do with Fab. So join us, and definitely be sure to like and subscribe if you want those notifications. We got our YouTube channel. We're also on Facebook, so feel free to like our Facebook page. It's sort of where we start all of our content sharing on the Facebooks. So check that out, and thanks for joining us, just for like a little more chill discussion, not as much conflict as we may have with the rest of us. I know we're changing up our schedule ourselves here a little bit, so some people can make it, some people couldn't, so we might have some people popping in and out more often than not. But still looking forward to talking to you guys, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Peace.